They say the measure of a society is how it treats those who can do absolutely nothing for them. On a humid Tuesday in Atlanta's Piedmont Park, that measure was tested. And the world failed. Meet Elijah. To the teenagers with the $1,000 iPhones and the designer sneakers, he was just crazy Elijah. The man who talked to the wind. The man who sat in the same spot for 12 hours a day, staring at a horizon they couldn't see. They saw a target. They saw someone who was less than. If you are someone who believes that every human being deserves respect, no matter what they wear or where they sleep, hit that like button right now. If you believe that the proud must be humbled and the humble must be exalted, hit subscribe and turn on your notifications. But what they didn't see were the black Suburbans idling 3 blocks away. They didn't see the men in earpieces watching through high-powered lenses. They didn't know that the crazy old man they were currently spitting on was the only reason their parents were able to sleep safely in their mansions at night. Before I tell you the moment the sirens screamed and the park was locked down by men with automatic weapons, before I show you the look of pure terror on these children's faces when they realized who they had truly insulted, I need you to do something. On this channel we tell the stories the world tries to bury. We tell the stories of the invisible heroes, the modern-day African folk tales, and the legendary paybacks that remind us that God is always watching. Today's story isn't just about a prank gone wrong. It's about a man who gave everything for a country that forgot his name, and the disrespectful generation that was about to get a 5-star lesson in humility. Drop a comment below saying respect, if you're ready for this journey. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Elijah Vance was 74 years old. He lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment in Bankhead, a place where the paint peeled like sunburnt skin and the elevator worked only when it felt like it. To his neighbors, he was the quiet man in 3B who smelled like peppermint and old books. He was a man of routine. Every morning at 5:30 a.m. Elijah would wake up. He would polish his boots, even though they were 20 years old and the soles were thin. He would press his shirt with an old iron, making sure the creases were sharp enough to cut paper. And then he would pick up his battered leather briefcase. "Going to work, Mr. Elijah?" the young boy downstairs, Tobe, would ask. Elijah would smile, a gentle, tired smile that reached his eyes. "Just keeping watch, son. Someone has to make sure the world keeps spinning." The neighborhood thought he was eccentric. Maybe a little touched in the head. But Elijah didn't mind. He had spent 40 years of his life being someone else. He had been a ghost in the halls of power. A man who sat in rooms in Lagos, London, and DC where the fate of millions was decided with a whisper. He was a master of intelligence, a man who had saved the lives of 3 different presidents. But when he retired, he chose the shadows. He chose to be nobody. Because when you've seen the darkest parts of humanity, there is a certain peace in being invisible. However, there was one thing that kept him tethered to the world. Sarah. Sarah was his wife of 45 years. She had been a nurse, a woman who could heal a broken soul with a bowl of pepper soup and a prayer. She was the one who kept him human. But 3 years ago Sarah passed away. And when she died, a part of Elijah went with her. He didn't want the pension. He didn't want the medals they tried to give him in secret ceremonies. He only wanted her. So he started going to the park. Piedmont Park. It was the place they had their first date back in 1974. He would sit on the Sarah bench, the one he had paid to have a small plaque placed on. He would sit there and talk to her. To the outside world he was a crazy old man talking to an empty seat. To Elijah he was home. But the world has a way of invading peace. Enter Hunter, Chloe, and Marcus. They were the kings of the North Side. Seniors at a private academy where the tuition cost more than Elijah's apartment building. Hunter's father was a senator. Marcus's father owned a fleet of tech companies. Chloe's mother was a high-powered judge. They were children of privilege, raised with the belief that the world was their playground and everyone else was just an NPC, a non-playable character. They had a TikTok channel with 3 million followers. Their content? Pranking the poor. They thought it was comedy. They would film themselves giving homeless people gold spray-painted rocks, or ordering $500 of food and throwing it away in front of hungry people. They called it social experiments. The world called it cruelty. On this particular Tuesday they were looking for content. They were bored. And then they saw him. "Check it out," Hunter whispered, adjusting his hidden camera. "The local loony. He's been talking to that bench for 20 minutes. This is going to be viral gold." Elijah was in the middle of a conversation with Sarah. He was telling her about the birds he saw that morning. He didn't notice the three teenagers approaching. He didn't notice the way they were snickering or the way Marcus was holding his phone at a low angle to capture Elijah's worn-out shoes. "Excuse me, sir?" Hunter said, his voice dripping with fake concern. Elijah blinked, pulling himself back from his memories. He looked up at the young man. "Yes, son. We're doing a documentary on, mental health," Hunter lied, looking back at the girls who were stifling laughs. "We noticed you've been talking to yourself. Do you need us to call someone? Or are the voices telling you to do something exciting for the camera?" Elijah looked at them. Truly looked at them. He saw the expensive logos on their clothes. He saw the arrogance in their posture. But more than that, he saw the vacuum where their empathy should have been. "I'm just talking to my wife, young man," Elijah said softly. "It's a beautiful day. You should enjoy it instead of staring at that screen." Marcus stepped forward, scoffing. "Your wife? Bro, there's no one there. You're literally talking to a piece of wood. It's kind of pathetic, don't you think? Like, my dog has more social life than you." Chloe giggled. Marcus, stop. He's probably a veteran or something. They all get like this when they lose their marbles. He turned to Elijah. "So, General, what's in the briefcase? Nuclear codes? Or just a bunch of old napkins and cat food?" Elijah gripped the handle of his briefcase tighter. Inside weren't napkins. Inside was a secure satellite uplink, a courtesy of his former life. A device he carried because, despite being retired, Elijah Vance was still the only man who knew the backdoor codes to the nation's most sensitive power grids. He was a live asset. "It's just my work," Elijah said, his voice remaining calm. "Please, I'd like to be alone now." "Oh, he wants to be alone," Hunter shouted to his followers on the livestream. "The king of the park wants his privacy. Well, what if we decided that this park belongs to the taxpayers? And since my dad practically runs this city, maybe I don't like looking at crazy people cluttering up the scenery." Hunter reached down and grabbed Elijah's briefcase. "Give that back," Elijah said. The tone of his voice changed. The gentle old man disappeared for a split second. For a moment, the eyes of a Cold War assassin flickered in the light. Hunter felt a chill, but his ego was too large to listen to his instincts. "Make me old man. What are you going to do? Yell at the wind some more?" Hunter tossed the briefcase to Marcus. They started playing Keep Away, laughing as Elijah struggled to stand up on his aching knees. "Look at him. He's like a turtle on its back." Chloe laughed, filming the whole thing. Then the prank took a darker turn. Hunter reached into his backpack and pulled out a bottle of premium, expensive sparkling water. "You look thirsty, Elijah," Hunter said. "And you look like you haven't had a bath in a decade. Let me help you out." Before Elijah could react, Hunter unscrewed the cap and began pouring the water over Elijah's head. The cold water soaked into Elijah's pressed shirt. It ran down his face, dripping off his chin. Elijah didn't fight. He didn't shout. He just sat there frozen. Not because he was weak, but because he was looking at the ground. In the scuffle, the small photograph he kept in his pocket had fallen out. It was the only photo he had of Sarah from the day she graduated nursing school. It was his most precious possession. And Marcus, without looking, stepped right on it. His heavy designer sneaker crunched the plastic frame, grinding the image into the mud. Elijah's world stopped. At that exact moment, 2 miles away, in a windowless room inside a secure facility, a red light began to flash. "Target gray ghost heart rate is spiking," a technician said, leaning into his console. "Stress levels at 90%. GPS shows he's at Piedmont Park. We have a visual via park security. Sir, he's being assaulted." A man in a dark suit stood up, his face turning to stone. "Assaulted? By who?" "Sir. Looks like a harassment situation. But they've taken the briefcase." The man in the suit didn't hesitate. "That briefcase contains the level 5 encryption keys. If they force that lock, we have a national security breach. Code Black. Launch the quick response team. And notify the White House. Tell them the ghost is compromised." Back in Piedmont Park, the teenagers were having the time of their lives. Hunter was still holding the empty water bottle, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. Marcus was doing a victory dance, while holding Elijah's briefcase above his head like a trophy. "Look at him," Marcus sneered, pointing his phone at Elijah, who was now on his hands and knees in the dirt, trying to pick up the pieces of Sarah's crushed photograph. The ghost is looking for his spirit wife. Yo, Elijah, maybe she's under my shoe? Oh wait. Marcus did a fake stumble, grinding his heel into the mud one more time. Elijah's hands trembled. He didn't look up. He didn't beg. He just whispered, "My mother used to say that a man who mocks the elderly is like a man who sets fire to his own roof to see the light. Eventually the rain will come and you will have nowhere to hide." Hunter barked a laugh. "Your mother was probably as crazy as you are, old man. This is 2024. Your wisdom doesn't mean anything here. Money is the only language this world speaks, and looking at you, you're illiterate." Chloe stepped closer, her expensive perfume clashing with the smell of the damp earth. "We should just leave him. He's bored now. Let's go to the mall and see if we can buy some real clothes for him to pick up later." But as they turned to leave, something changed. The park, which had been filled with the sound of children playing and dogs barking, suddenly went dead silent. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a lightning strike. First it was the birds. They stopped chirping and took flight all at once. Then it was the sound of the wind. And then came the low rhythmic hum of heavy engines. From the north entrance of the park, 3 blacked-out Cadillac Suburbans roared onto the grass, ignoring the pathways. They moved with a military precision that was terrifying to behold. Simultaneously, 2 more drifted in from the south. "Whoa, is that a movie set?" Marcus asked, his phone still recording. "Is that like a celebrity?" The Suburbans didn't stop until they had formed a perfect perimeter around the bench. The dust kicked up by their tires coated the teenagers' designer clothes. The doors flew open in unison. 10 men stepped out. They weren't wearing police uniforms. They were wearing charcoal tactical suits, earpieces, and sunglasses that looked like liquid ink. They weren't carrying standard pistols. They were carrying submachine guns held in low-ready positions. The teenagers froze. The air was sucked out of the park. "Hands!" one of the agents screamed, his voice like a crack of thunder. "Drop the property and put your hands on your heads." Now. Hunter's expensive water bottle fell from his hand. Marcus dropped the briefcase like it was made of hot lead. Chloe began to sob, her phone clattering to the pavement. "We didn't do anything." Hunter screamed, his voice cracking. "My father is Senator Collins. You can't do this. Do you know who my father is?" A man stepped out from the lead vehicle. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. This was Director Miller of the Secret Service. He didn't even look at Hunter. He walked straight through the mud, ignored the teenagers entirely, and knelt down in front of the old man on the ground. The 300 people watching in the park stopped breathing. They saw the most powerful law enforcement officer in the region, a man who answers only to the president, kneeling in the dirt next to the crazy old man. "Sir," Director Miller said, his voice thick with respect. "We detected a breach. Are you harmed?" Elijah looked up. He wiped the mud from his face with the back of his hand. He looked like a king who had been momentarily displaced. "They broke the photo, Miller. They broke Sarah." The director's jaw tightened. He looked at the crushed plastic and the muddy image of the nurse. A cold, dark anger filled his eyes. He stood up and turned toward the 3 teenagers. "Director, please." Hunter cried out, his knees shaking. "It was just a prank. We didn't know we thought he was homeless. It's just a joke for TikTok." Miller walked up to Hunter. He was so close that Hunter could see his own terrified reflection in the director's glasses. "A prank," Miller whispered. "You are standing in the presence of a man who served 5 administrations. A man who prevented 3 separate nuclear escalations while your father was still in diapers. You didn't just prank a veteran. You assaulted a national asset." Miller looked at an agent. "Search for them. And get Senator Collins on the line. Right now." Within seconds, the teenagers were being patted down like common criminals. Their $1,200 phones were confiscated. "My dad is going to sue you," Marcus yelled, trying to regain some of his bravado. "He owns half the tech firms in this city." Director Miller pulled out his own phone. He put it on speaker. "Hello," a voice answered. It was Senator Collins, Hunter's father. He sounded tired and stressed. "Senator," Miller said. "This is Director Miller. I'm currently at Piedmont Park with your son. He is being detained for the harassment and assault of a level 1 protected asset. There was a long silence on the other end. Then the senator's voice came back, sounding like he had just aged 20 years. Miller. Please tell me you're joking. Is it the gray ghost? It is, Senator. Your son poured water on his head and crushed the only remains of his deceased wife while filming it for clout. The senator's voice turned into a roar that everyone in the park could hear. Hunter. You idiot. I am in the middle of a re-election campaign. Do you have any idea what you've done? Director. Do what you have to do. I'm not stepping in. In fact, pull his trust fund. Cancel his credit cards. If he's going to act like a thug, he can live like one. The phone clicked off. Hunter collapsed to his knees. The king of the North Side was now just a boy in the dirt, crying for a father who had just disowned him. But the payback wasn't over. Elijah stood up. He walked over to Marcus. He looked down at his briefcase. You wanted to know what was in here? Elijah asked quietly. Elijah opened the briefcase. He pressed a biometric thumbprint. A screen lit up. This device monitors the power grid of the southeastern United States, Elijah said. If I don't check in every 6 hours, the system assumes I've been kidnapped and triggers a level 4 security lockdown. You almost shut down the power to 3 states for a TikTok video. Elijah looked at the 3 of them. You think money makes you important. You think your clothes define your value. But my grandmother in the village back in Nigeria used to say, a golden coffin doesn't make the ghost any less dead. You are empty inside. And today the world saw it. The Secret Service didn't take them to jail. They did something much worse. They made sure the video went viral. But not the version the teens wanted. The Secret Service released the dashcam footage of the teens crying and begging, juxtaposed with the record of Elijah Vance's service to his country. Within 24 hours they were expelled from their elite academy. Their friends vanished. Their social media accounts were flooded with millions of comments calling them cowards. 6 months later, if you go to Piedmont Park, you'll see 3 young people in orange vests. They are scrubbing the graffiti off the walls and picking up trash under the sun. They aren't allowed to have phones. They are doing 1,000 hours of community service, ordered by Chloe's own mother, the judge, who refused to show them mercy. And what about Elijah? The Secret Service offered to move him to a high-security mansion. They offered him a driver, a chef, and a pension that would make him a millionaire. Elijah refused it all. He stayed in his apartment in Bankhead. But something had changed. Now every Tuesday a fleet of black Suburbans still pulls up to the park. But they don't stay in the cars. The agents get out and they sit with Elijah. They bring him jollof rice and pepper soup from the best African kitchen in Atlanta. They listen to his stories. They treat him like the living legend he is. And on the Sarah bench there is a new plaque. It's made of solid gold. And above it, there is a new photograph, digitally restored by the best technicians at the CIA. It's a photo of Sarah, smiling, looking just as beautiful as the day Elijah met her. Elijah Vance isn't crazy Elijah anymore. He's the man who watches over the city. The lesson of this tale is simple. Your status is not your shadow. It doesn't tell people who you really are. It only tells them what you have. Never mistake a person's silence for weakness, and never mistake their clothes for their character. The world is a mirror. If you spit at it, the wind will eventually blow it back into your own face. But if you bow to it, the world will rise to meet you. If this story moved your heart, if you believe in the power of respect and the weight of a life well lived, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because on this channel, we believe that the smallest person in the room is often the one holding up the ceiling. Thank you for reading. Remember, stay humble or the world will do it for you. See you in the next tale.